The galaxy had been quiet for 3,000 years. 12 alien races worked together under the Zanari Consortium, keeping peace across millions of star systems. But there was one place they never went. One place that was marked with warning, beacons and patrolled by the strongest warships. The Milky Way galaxy was forbidden. Deep in the Consortium archives, locked away from public access, were the records that explained why. 3,000 years ago, long-range scouts had found something in the outer spiral arm of that distant galaxy. A young species that the scientists called humans. The reports made every alien leader's blood run cold. These humans were different from anything they had ever seen. They fought wars that lasted for years, sometimes decades. They built weapons that could destroy entire cities. But the worst part was how fast they learned. In just a few hundred years, they went from throwing rocks to splitting atoms. The Consortium made a choice that day. They would quarantine the entire galaxy and wait for the humans to destroy themselves. But humans did not destroy themselves. They kept growing, kept learning, kept reaching for the stars. Captain Jake Morrison did not know any of this when he stepped onto the bridge of the New Horizon on a cold Tuesday morning in 2387. He was 35 years old, with dark hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles in the outer colonies. His crew trusted him because he never panicked, never gave up, and always brought them home. "Jump drive is ready for testing, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Collins from her position at the communications station. She was young, maybe 26, with red hair pulled back and a tight ponytail. Amy was the best communications officer in the fleet, able to crack any code or signal they threw at her. "All systems show green," added engineer Tony Martinez from his console. Tony was built like a tank, with thick arms covered in scars from years of working with dangerous machinery. He could fix anything that broke and improve anything that worked. Commander Ryan Hayes stood next to the captain's chair, watching the displays with sharp blue eyes. Ryan was Jake's second in command and his oldest friend. They had served together for 12 years through 3 wars and countless dangerous missions. Ryan was the kind of man who would follow you into hell if you asked him to. "Dr. Park, are you getting good readings on the jump field?" Jake asked. Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her science station, pushing her glasses up her nose. Lisa was a genius who understood things that made other people's heads hurt. She had designed HAF, the systems on the New Horizon, and could speak 6 different computer languages fluently. "All readings are normal, Captain. The new jump drive should take us farther than we have ever gone before." Jake nodded and sat down in his command chair. The New Horizon was humanity's most advanced exploration ship. She was built for long missions into unknown space, with shields that could stop asteroids and weapons that could crack planets. But her real strength was her crew of 47 men and women who had volunteered to push the boundaries of human knowledge. "Begin jump sequence," Jake ordered. The ship hummed as power flowed into the experimental drive. Outside the windows, stars began to stretch into lines of light. Then something went wrong. "Captain, we have a problem," Tony called out, his voice tight with concern. "The jump field is not stable. We are going farther than planned." "How much farther?" Ryan asked. "I don't know. The readings don't make sense." The ship shook as reality twisted around them. Jake gripped his chair as the lights flickered. Through the windows, the stars looked wrong, like they were being pulled through a tunnel of fire. Then everything stopped. "Report," Jake said, standing up and looking around the bridge. Amy checked her instruments first. "We are in the Kepler 442 system, Captain, but that's impossible. That system is over 2,000 light-years from Earth." Lisa looked up from her science station, her face pale. "Captain, the star patterns are all wrong. We are not just far from Earth. We are outside the local group entirely." Jake felt cold. They had jumped farther than any human had ever traveled. They were alone in unknown space, with no way to call for help and no idea how to get home. "Sir," Amy said, her voice excited now, "I'm getting signals, artificial signals from the 4th planet." The bridge went quiet. Every person stopped what they were doing and looked at the communications station. They had found alien life. "Put it on speakers," Jake said. The bridge filled with sounds unlike anything they had ever heard. complex patterns of tones and frequencies that clearly carried information. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. "Captain, we have made first contact." But Amy's face had gone white as she listened to her equipment. "Captain, I'm picking up another signal. Military frequency, it's getting stronger." On the main screen, 6 ships appeared out of nowhere. They were unlike anything in human records. Sleek and crystalline, they seemed to bend light around their hulls. They were beautiful and deadly, like glass knives floating in space. "Red alert," Jake called out. "All hands to battle stations." A new voice came over the communication system. It was cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect English. "Unknown vessel, you have violated the quarantine. By order of the Zenari Consortium, you will be destroyed." Jake looked around his bridge, at the faces of his crew. They were scared but ready to fight. Amy's hands moved over her controls, trying to establish communication. Tony was already rerouting power to weapons and shields. Ryan was coordinating with the other departments, preparing for battle. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Horizon," Jake said into his communicator. "We come in peace. We did not know about any quarantine." The alien ships moved closer, their weapons glowing with blue energy. "Your species is forbidden. Your galaxy is forbidden. Prepare to die." Jake made a choice that would change everything. Instead of running or begging for mercy, he looked at his crew and smiled. "Well, team, looks like we just started humanity's first interstellar war. Let's make sure we win it." Admiral Kethvar had destroyed 43 ships in his 200 years of quarantine duty. Every time was the same. The contained species would see his fleet and either run away screaming or beg for mercy. Then he would fire his weapons and another threat to galactic peace would be gone forever. But the human ship did not run. It did not beg. Instead, it did something that had never happened before in the history of quarantine enforcement. "All frequencies are open, Admiral," reported his communications officer. "The humans are broadcasting on every channel we use." Kethvar stared at his screens in confusion. The human captain was speaking directly to him, using words that should have been impossible for his species to know. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Horizon. We come in peace and request dialogue." The bridge of Kethvar's flagship went silent. In 2 centuries of service, no quarantined species had ever learned their language. Most could barely understand that they were about to die. "How are they speaking our words?" asked Commander Zeth, his second in command. "I do not know. This has never happened before." Inside the New Horizon, Dr. Lisa Park was working faster than she had ever worked in her life. Her hands moved across her console like lightning as she analyzed the alien signals coming from the enemy ships. "Amy, I need you to record everything they send us," Lisa called out. "Every tone, every frequency, every pattern." Amy Collins was already on it. Her communications equipment was capturing and storing every piece of data that came from the alien fleet. "Got it, Doc. What are you looking for?" "Language patterns, mathematics, something that will let us talk to them." Lisa had always been good with numbers. As a child, she could solve math problems that made grown-ups scratch their heads. In college, she learned 7 different programming languages in 1 semester. But this was different. This was trying to understand an entirely alien way of thinking in minutes instead of years. She noticed that the aliens used patterns of 12 instead of 10. Their mathematics were built around a different base system. Their communication had 7 layers of meaning instead of the 3 that humans used. But there were connections, patterns that made sense if you looked at them the right way. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tight with excitement. "I think I can build a translation program. Give me 5 more minutes." Captain Morrison looked at the alien ships on his screen. Their weapons were charging up, getting ready to fire. "You have 3 minutes, Doctor." Tony Martinez was not thinking about languages or mathematics. He was studying the alien ships with the eyes of an engineer who had been fixing and fighting machines his whole life. The crystalline vessels were beautiful, but they followed rules just like any other machine. "Ryan, look at this," Tony said, pointing to his tactical display. "Their weapons charge in a cycle. 7 seconds to build power, 3 seconds to aim, 2 seconds to fire. Then they have to cool down for 15 seconds. Commander Ryan Hayes studied the pattern. You're saying they're predictable? Everything mechanical is predictable if you watch it long enough. These ships are fast and powerful, but they follow the same rules as any other weapon system. Lieutenant, Ben Carter was watching the alien formation from his position at the tactical station. Ben had been a fighter pilot before joining the exploration service. He understood combat in a way that most scientists never would. Sir, they're moving into a standard attack formation. 6 ships in a hexagon pattern with overlapping fields of fire. It's textbook perfect, but that also makes it predictable. Jake Morrison listened to his crew and felt proud. While the aliens were probably planning how to destroy them quickly, his people were already learning, adapting, finding ways to survive. This was what made humans special. They never gave up and they learned from everything. Translation program is ready, Lisa announced. Sending it to communications now. Amy's eyes went wide as her console filled with new information. Captain, this is incredible. I can understand what they're saying. The alien admiral's voice came through the speakers again, but this time Amy could translate it in real time. Unknown vessel responds in our language. This is not possible. What manner of beings are you? Jake smiled and picked up his communicator. We are human beings from the planet Earth. We seek peaceful contact with other intelligent species. There was a long pause from the alien fleet. When Admiral Kethavar spoke again, his voice sounded different, less certain. Your species was quarantined for good reason. You are dangerous. You adapt too quickly. You learn too fast. This conversation proves why you must be destroyed. We don't want to fight you, Jake replied, but we will defend ourselves if we have to. Kethavar had heard those words before, from dozens of species over 2 centuries. But something about the way the human captain said them made his scales itch with worry. There was no fear in the human's voice. Only calm determination. All ships, prepare to fire, Kethavar ordered. The first battle between humans and aliens lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it was over, everything had changed. The humans did not have better weapons or stronger shields. Their ship was outnumbered 6-1 by vessels that were more advanced in every way, but they had something the aliens had never faced before. Tony, Martinez watched the alien weapon cycles and called out timing to Ben Carter. Ben used his fighter pilot reflexes to make the New Horizon dance between enemy fire like it was a ship, 1/10 its size. Amy coordinated the ship's response systems, while simultaneously cracking more alien communication codes. Lisa analyzed each enemy shot and found ways to make their own shields more effective, and Captain Morrison tied it all together, making decisions faster than any alien admiral could process. When the first alien ship took damage, Admiral Kethavar felt something he had not experienced in 200 years of military service. Fear. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were learning from every shot fired, every maneuver attempted, every tactic used against them. By the end of the first minute, they were anticipating his moves. By the end of the second minute, they were countering his strategies before he could implement them. This is impossible, Commander Zeth whispered. They are adapting in real time. Sir, his weapons officer reported, the human ship has somehow modified their shield frequency to match our weapon harmonics. Our shots are becoming less effective. Kethavar stared at his displays in shock. The humans had reverse-engineered Zanari shield technology during combat. No species in galactic history had ever done anything like that. Cease fire, he ordered. All ships, cease fire immediately. The battle stopped as suddenly as it had begun. In the silence that followed, Admiral Kethavar opened a direct channel to the human ship. Captain Morrison, I am Admiral Kethavar of the Zanari Consortium. I have a question that I must ask. Go ahead, Admiral. In 200 years of military service, I have never seen anything like what your crew just accomplished. You faced superior numbers and technology, yet you not only survived but began to gain advantage. So I ask you again, what are you? Jake Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Amy was still working on communication protocols. Lisa was analyzing alien technology. Tony was studying the enemy ship designs. Ryan was coordinating damage control. Ben was planning their next move if the fighting started again. They were all doing what humans did best. They were adapting, learning, growing stronger. "We are explorers, Admiral," Jake said simply. "We are teachers and students, builders and dreamers. We are people who believe that any problem can be solved if you work hard enough and never give up. And that," Jake added, "is exactly why you should be afraid of us." The emergency meeting of the Zanari Consortium High Council had been called for the first time in 50 years. Holographic images of 12 different alien species filled the crystal chamber that orbited around a dead star. Each representative looked worried. Some looked terrified. Councillor Thane of the Vorthan Empire spoke first. His people were tall and thin, with skin like polished metal and eyes that glowed with inner fire. The Vorthans had been warriors for 10,000 years before joining the consortium. "Admiral Kethvar's report is troubling," Thane said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "The humans adapted to our technology during active combat. In 4 minutes, they learned what takes most species decades to understand." Senator Krill of the Aquatic Collective shifted in her water-filled tank. Her people looked like giant squids with intelligence that could calculate the movement of stars. They had been the first to suggest the quarantine 3,000 years ago. "The adaptation rate is 47 times faster than any species we have recorded," Krill said, her tentacles moving in patterns that showed deep concern. But that is not the worst part of the report. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what she was going to say next. The humans did not try to escape when facing superior force. They did not surrender when outmatched. Instead, they tried to communicate. They wanted to understand us. Councillor Vex of the Silicon Brotherhood made a sound like grinding stone. His people were living rock formations that thought in geological time. When Vex spoke, it was always important. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors made the quarantine decision based on observation data. We watched the humans fight wars that lasted decades. We saw them build weapons that could crack continents. We believed they were a species of pure violence. But the report suggests something different, added Councillor Yith of the Gas Giant Collective. Her people were energy beings who lived in the upper atmospheres of huge planets. The humans fought only when attacked. Their first response was attempted communication. On board the New Horizon, Dr. Sandra Wells was having the strangest conversation of her life. Sandra was the ship's psychologist, trained to help crew members deal with stress and trauma. But right now she was trying to understand the minds of aliens who had tried to kill them an hour ago. "Admiral Kethvar," Sandra said, speaking into the communication system, "can you help me understand why you wanted to destroy us without talking? First?" There was a long pause before the alien admiral replied. "Dr. Wells, your species was quarantined because our ancestors believed you were too dangerous to contact." "Dangerous how? We just wanted to talk." "That is exactly what makes you dangerous." Sandra frowned. She had studied human psychology for 15 years, but alien psychology was completely new. "I don't understand." Most species, when they encounter superior technology, react with fear or submission. They try to run away or surrender. Your people did neither. You tried to understand us, to communicate with us, to find common ground. That terrifies us. Sandra thought about this for a moment. "You're afraid of us because we want to be friends. We are afraid of you because you make everything around you better. Every species that has contact with humans becomes stronger, smarter, more capable. In 3,000 years, you could unite the entire galaxy under your influence without firing a single shot." Captain Morrison was listening to this conversation from his command chair. The idea that humans were feared because they were helpful seemed crazy to him. But as he thought about it, he began to understand. Humans did have a habit of improving everything they touched. They took ideas from other cultures and made them better. They learned languages and added new words to them. They studied alien technology and found ways to enhance it. "Admiral," Jake said, joining the conversation, "what if we promised not to interfere with your government or your people?" "Captain Morrison, you do not understand. You cannot help but interfere. It is your nature. Within hours of meeting us, your people had learned our language, understood our technology, and begun improving your own systems based on our designs. Lieutenant Amy Collins looked up from her communication station. Captain, I'm getting reports from the Consortium Council meeting. They're debating whether to lift the quarantine or reinforce it. Dr. Lisa Park had been quiet during most of these conversations, but now she spoke up. Captain, I've been analyzing the historical data they transmitted to us. There's something they're not telling us. What do you mean, Doctor? The quarantine records mention 12 member species in the consortium, but the early documents reference 13 species. One of them has been completely erased from recent history. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Show me what you found. Lisa put her data on the main screen. Ancient records filled with gaps where information had been deleted. References to something called the Destroyers that appeared in documents from 3,000 years ago, but vanished. From newer files. Captain? Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think the quarantine wasn't meant to protect the galaxy from us. I think it was meant to protect us from something else. In the Consortium Council chamber, the debate was getting heated. Counselor Zara of the Plant Collective spoke with the voice of a forest. Her people were living trees that shared thoughts through root networks spanning entire continents. The destroyer threat grows stronger every year, Zara said, her voice rustling like wind through leaves. Our outer colonies report more attacks. Our fleets cannot stop them. Perhaps it is time to consider that the humans could help us. Help us? Thane's voice cracked like breaking metal. They would take over everything we have built. What have we built? Senator Krill's tentacles writhed with frustration. A civilization that hides behind barriers while our people die? A government that is so afraid of change that it would rather face extinction than accept help? Counselor Vex spoke slowly, his stone voice carrying the weight of ages. I have lived for 8,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species grow and die. But I have never seen anything like the humans. They do not conquer through force. They conquer through friendship. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to reinforce the quarantine with larger fleets. Others wanted to make contact and seek an alliance. A few suggested destroying Earth before the humans could spread further into space. But in the end, it was Admiral Kethvar who made the decision for them. Consortium Council. His voice came through the communication system. Long-range sensors have detected destroyer scouts at the edge of our territory. They will reach our outer colonies in 6 months. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The destroyers had found them again. I am transmitting coordinates to the human ship, Kethvar continued. If we are going to die fighting the destroyers, we might as well see what these humans can do in a real battle. Captain Morrison looked at the coordinates appearing on his navigation screen. The location was 3 months away at maximum speed. It was the site where the next destroyer attack was predicted to occur. Admiral, Jake said, are you asking us to help you fight? I am asking you to prove that humans are as dangerous as we think you are, because if you are not, we are all going to die. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. 47 people against an enemy that had been winning a war for 3,000 years. The odds were impossible. The mission was probably suicide. Amy Collins smiled and started plotting a course to the coordinates. Tony Martinez began calculating what modifications they could make to their weapons. Lisa Park started analyzing everything they knew about destroyer technology. Ryan Hayes began planning how to coordinate with alien allies they had met only hours ago. Dr. Sandra Wells understood something that the Consortium Council did not. Humans were not dangerous because they conquered through force or fear. They were dangerous because when someone asked for help, they always said yes. Set course for the coordinates, Amy, Captain Morrison ordered. Maximum speed. Aye, Captain, course laid in. Admiral Kethvar, this is Captain Morrison. We'll be there in 3 months. Try to keep everyone alive until we arrive. The New Horizon turned toward its destination, carrying 47 humans into their first galactic war. Behind them, the Consortium Council continued to debate whether they had just saved civilization or doomed it forever. The journey to Kepler 438b took 3 months. During that time, the New Horizon became something that had never existed before in galactic history. It became a floating university where humans and aliens learned from each other. Dr. Lisa Park spent most of her time in the cargo bay that had been converted into a laboratory. Admiral Kethvar had transmitted everything the consortium knew about the destroyers, and what she learned made her blood run cold. The destroyers were not like any normal species. They did not build cities or farms or families. They existed only to consume. They would arrive at a star system, strip it of all life and resources, then move on to the next target. In 3,000 years, they had destroyed over 200 civilizations. "Captain," Lisa said, looking up from her research, "the destroyers don't follow normal attack patterns. Most species fight for territory or resources. The destroyers fight to make everything dead." Captain Morrison studied the data on his personal tablet. The reports were filled with accounts of entire planets turned into empty rocks, space stations torn apart and their crews eaten alive, fleets that simply vanished without sending a single distress call. "What makes them so effective?" Jake asked. "They attack the mind first," Dr. Sandra Wells said, joining the conversation. Sandra had been analyzing psychological profiles of destroyer survivors. "They broadcast fear directly into their victims' brains. Most species become paralyzed with terror before the physical attack even begins." Engineer Tony Martinez had been working with consortium technical experts to understand destroyer technology. What he learned made him angry. "Captain, their ships are built wrong. They sacrifice efficiency for intimidation. They could be much more effective, but they choose to be scary instead." "That tells us something important," Jake said. "They want their enemies to be afraid. Fear is a weapon for them." Lieutenant Amy Collins had been practicing communication with the alien fleet that was traveling with them. 47 ships from 12 different species, all coordinated by a human communications officer who had learned their languages in 3 months. "Captain, Admiral Kethvar wants to speak with you," Amy reported. The main screen showed the bridge of the Zanari flagship. Admiral Kethvar looked tired. His scales, which had been bright silver when they first met, were now dull gray with stress. "Captain Morrison, we will reach Kepler 438b in 2 days. I must ask you something that has been troubling me." "Go ahead, Admiral." "In all our records, no species has ever defeated the destroyers in direct combat. Many have tried. All have failed. What makes you think humans can succeed where others could not?" Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Amy was coordinating with alien communications officers. Tony was modifying weapon systems with alien engineers. Lisa was sharing research with alien scientists. Ryan was planning tactics with alien military commanders. "Admiral, I think you're asking the wrong question. The right question is not whether humans can defeat the destroyers. The right question is whether humans and aliens working together can defeat them." Kethavar's eyes widened. "You believe cooperation is the key?" "I believe that's why you were losing. 12 species working separately against one enemy. But now, you have something different. You have humans who specialize in making everyone around them work better together." 2 days later, they arrived at Kepler 438b to find a sight that made everyone sick. The fourth planet in the system was half dead. One side of the world was still green and blue, covered with cities and forests. The other side was gray and empty, stripped of all life. "They're already here," Commander Ryan Hayes said, studying the tactical displays. 3 destroyer ships in orbit. They're taking their time, killing the planet slowly. Lieutenant Ben Carter had been studying destroyer combat footage for 3 months. "Sir, they always do this. They kill planets piece by piece to spread maximum fear. It makes the defenders panic and fight poorly." Dr. Sandra Wells understood the psychology immediately. They want the survivors to watch their world die. The fear makes them weak. Captain Morrison felt anger building in his chest. These creatures were not warriors. They were bullies who enjoyed causing pain. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison. We go in fast and hard. No hesitation, no fear, no mercy." The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 48 ships from 13 different species moving as one unit. It was the first truly integrated galactic fleet in recorded history. The destroyers reacted immediately. Their ships were massive, black things that seemed to absorb light. They looked like giant insects made of metal and hate. As soon as they detected the approaching fleet, they began broadcasting. Dr. Sandra Wells had prepared for this moment. All ships, activate mental shielding now. Do not listen to their fear broadcasts. The alien crews followed her instructions, using meditation techniques and technological shields to block the destroyer mental attacks. But the humans did something different. They listened to the fear broadcasts and laughed. "Is that supposed to scare us?" Tony Martinez said, chuckling at his engineering station. "I've heard scarier sounds from broken machinery." Amy Collins was translating the destroyer broadcasts in real time. "Captain, they're trying to tell us we're all going to die horribly. They're very creative about it, but it's basically just name-calling." The psychological warfare that had paralyzed hundreds of species for 3,000 years had no effect on humans at all. Humans had spent their entire history facing things that wanted to kill them. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. The idea that scary monsters wanted to hurt them was not new or frightening. The battle began with the destroyers confident that their enemies would break and run as soon as the shooting started. They had never been wrong about this before. They were wrong about humans. Captain Morrison coordinated the fleet attack with calm precision. Group Alpha hit their engines. Group Beta target their weapons. Group Gamma rescue operations on the planet's surface. The alien ships followed human tactics for the first time in their history. Instead of the careful defensive formations they had used for thousands of years, they attacked with speed and aggression that caught the destroyers completely off guard. Tony Martinez had been right about destroyer ship design. Their vessels were built to intimidate rather than fight efficiently. Under concentrated fire from weapons that had been upgraded with human modifications, the first destroyer ship began taking serious damage within minutes. "Impossible," Admiral Kethavar whispered from his flagship. "We have never hurt them this badly before." Amy Collins was monitoring all communications channels when she noticed something strange. "Captain, the destroyers are talking to each other. They sound confused." Dr. Lisa Park realized what was happening. "Captain, I don't think they know how to handle enemies who aren't afraid of them. Their entire strategy depends on fear, and it's not working." The second destroyer ship tried to ram the New Horizon in desperation. Lieutenant Ben Carter saw it coming and made the human ship dance out of the way like a leaf in the wind. As the enemy vessel passed by, Tony Martinez fired every weapon they had directly into its hull. The explosion lit up the entire star system. The third destroyer ship did something that no destroyer had ever done in 3,000 years of warfare. It tried to retreat. "All ships, do not let it escape," Captain Morrison ordered. "If even one gets away, they'll learn from this battle and adapt." The combined fleet chased the fleeing destroyer across the system. It was faster than any of their individual ships, but humans had taught the aliens something new. They had learned to work together. Amy coordinated the pursuit while 12 different alien species took turns attacking the enemy. Every time the destroyer tried to escape in one direction, another group of ships was waiting for it. Dr. Sandra Wells watched the final moments of the battle and understood something profound. "Captain, they're not just running because they're losing. They're running because they're experiencing something they've never felt before." "What's that, Doctor?" "Fear. For the first time in their existence, the destroyers are afraid." The last destroyer ship died in a ball of fire near the edge of the system. The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Kethavar's voice over the communication system. "Captain Morrison, in 3,000 years of war, we have never achieved a complete victory against the destroyers. How did we do it?" Jake looked around his bridge at his crew, then up at the screen showing the faces of alien allies who had just fought beside them. "Admiral, you did it the same way humans have always solved impossible problems. You stopped fighting alone and started fighting together. The planet below was half dead, but the half that remained was safe. For the first time in galactic history, the destroyers had been stopped. And in the deep space beyond the system, long-range, sensors detected something that made everyone hold their breath. More destroyer fleets were changing course, heading toward Kepler 438b to investigate what had happened to their advance force. The real war was just beginning. The news of the victory at Kepler 438b spread across the galaxy faster than light. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had not just fought the destroyers, but had won completely. Every alien species in the consortium felt something. They had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the New Horizon, watching repair crews from a dozen different species working together to fix battle damage. Human engineers worked alongside Zenari technicians. Forthon warriors shared meals with human marines. It was something that would have been impossible just 6 months ago. "Captain," Dr. Lisa Park said, joining him at the window. "Long range. Sensors show 15 destroyer fleets heading this way. They'll be here in 2 weeks." Jake nodded. He had expected this. The destroyers had ruled the galaxy through fear for 3,000 years. They would not let one defeat go unanswered. "How many ships?" he asked. "Over 300, the largest destroyer force ever assembled." Jake did not feel afraid. Instead, he felt excited. 300 ships meant the destroyers were taking humans seriously. They were afraid enough to send everything they had. "Lisa, send a message to Earth. Tell them what we found out here. Tell them we need reinforcements." "Already done, Captain. Admiral Chen is bringing the entire 10th Fleet. They'll be here in 10 days. Jake smiled. Admiral Chen was his old commander from the colony wars. She was tough, smart, and never backed down from a fight. If anyone could help them win an impossible battle, it was her. Dr. Sandra Wells had been working with alien psychologists to understand what made the destroyers tick. What she learned changed everything. "Captain, the destroyers are not really a species," Sandra explained during the morning briefing. "They're more like a disease. They infect other species and turn them into copies of themselves." "Commander Ryan," Hayes looked up from his tactical display. "That explains why they all look different but act the same. They used to be dozens of different species." "Exactly. The destroyers win by making their enemies become like them. They spread fear and hatred until civilizations destroy themselves from within." Lieutenant Amy Collins had been monitoring destroyer communications for weeks. "Captain, they're doing something different this time. Instead of just attacking, they're broadcasting to every planet in consortium space." "What are they saying?" "They're telling everyone that the humans are the real threat. They're saying that we'll take over the galaxy and enslave everyone." Jake felt angry. The destroyers were trying to turn the consortium against humanity before the battle even began. It was exactly the kind of trick that had worked for 3,000 years. "Are any of the alien species believing it?" he asked. Amy smiled. "No, sir. Counselor Thane sent a reply that I can't translate because it contains too many curse words. The human reinforcements arrived 3 days early. Admiral, Chen brought not just the 10th Fleet but volunteers from every human colony in space. 200 ships crewed by humans who had heard about the war and come to help. Admiral Chen was a small woman with gray hair and eyes like steel. She had commanded fleets in 3 wars and never lost a battle. When she walked onto the bridge of the New Horizon, everyone stood up. "Jake Morrison, you look terrible," she said, grinning. "Fighting aliens has not been good for your appearance." "Good to see you too, Admiral. Ready for the biggest fight in human history?" "Son, I've been ready for this fight since I was 12 years old and read my first science fiction book. Let's show these monsters what humans can do." The combined fleet that assembled at Kepler 438b was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 400 ships from 14 different species, all working together under human coordination. It was not just the largest fleet in consortium history, it was the first truly united galactic military force. Engineer Tony Martinez had spent weeks working with alien technicians to upgrade every ship in the fleet. Human weapons were installed on alien vessels. Alien shields were modified with human improvements. Every ship was now better than it had been before. "Captain, the destroyer fleet is dropping out of hyperspace," Lieutenant Ben Carter reported. The main screen showed a sight that would have terrified any civilization in galactic history. 300 massive black ships arranged in perfect formation. They looked like a swarm of giant insects ready to devour everything in their path. But Captain Morrison looked at them and saw something different. He saw bullies who had never faced real resistance. He saw predators who had never met prey that could fight back. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. Today we end 3,000 years of fear. Today we show the galaxy that no one has to be afraid anymore. The battle began with the destroyers trying their usual tactics. They broadcast fear and terror on every frequency. They sent threats and promises of horrible death. They tried to make their enemies panic and run away. But this time, their enemies were led by humans, and humans had a very different response to threats. "Amy, open a channel to the destroyer fleet," Jake ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Jake smiled and spoke into his communicator. "Attention, destroyer fleet. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Horizon. We have a message for you." The response came back in a voice like grinding metal. "Humans, you will die screaming. Your species will be consumed. Your worlds will burn." "That's nice," Jake replied. "But we have a better idea. How about you surrender now and we'll let you live?" The silence that followed was broken by laughter from every human ship in the fleet. The idea of offering mercy to the destroyers was so unexpected that it caught them completely off guard. Admiral Chen's voice came over the command frequency. "All human ships, begin attack pattern Morrison Alpha. Let's teach these things how to fight properly." What followed was not really a battle. It was a lesson in how superior numbers mean nothing if you don't know how to use them properly. The destroyers had 300 ships, but they fought like 300 individual vessels. The Allied fleet had 400 ships that fought like one enormous weapon. Amy Collins coordinated communications between 14 different species in real time. Tony Martinez and his engineering teams kept every ship running at peak efficiency. Dr. Lisa Park analyzed enemy tactics and found weaknesses faster than the destroyers could adapt. But the real difference was leadership. Human commanders thought differently than alien generals. They took risks that seemed crazy but actually made perfect sense. They attacked when they should have defended. They retreated when they should have attacked. They did everything wrong according to alien military doctrine, and that was exactly why they won. Admiral Chen led her ships in a dance through the enemy formation that looked like chaos, but was actually perfectly coordinated. Every move was planned 3 steps ahead. Every attack supported 2 other attacks. Every defense created an opportunity for offense. The destroyers, who had never faced real opposition, had no idea how to respond to enemies who were not afraid of them. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the destroyer fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single enemy ship escaped. For the first time in galactic history, an entire destroyer force had been wiped out. But the real victory was not the destruction of enemy ships. The real victory was what happened next. Across the galaxy, species that had hidden in fear for 3,000 years began to venture out into open space again. Planets that had been abandoned were resettled. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries were reopened. The Consortium Council voted unanimously to end the quarantine of the Milky Way. Humanity was officially welcomed as the 14th member of the galactic community. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon 6 months later, watching construction crews build humanity's first embassy station in orbit around a star system that had been dead for 1,000 years. Now it was alive again, filled with ships from 15 different species working together to explore the galaxy. Dr. Sandra Wells joined him at the observation window. "Jake, do you think we did the right thing? Coming out here, I mean. Changing everything." Jake thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about the planets that were alive again. He thought about species that were no longer afraid. He thought about children from a dozen different worlds who would grow up in a galaxy where cooperation was stronger than fear. Sandra, 3,000 years ago, our ancestors looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not alone. We have friends out there and they have us. He pointed to the construction outside the window, where human and alien workers were building something that had never existed before. A future where different species could work together instead of fighting each other. "I think we did exactly what humans do best. We made everything better." The Milky Way was no longer forbidden. The galaxy was no longer afraid. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other species on other worlds looked up at the stars and wondered if they, too, might find friends among the infinite possibilities of the universe. The age of fear was over. The age of hope had begun.